Hello and welcome to this week's Inner Circle. I'm going to run through all the markets just to give us an update of where we are. Starting off with the S&P 500. These are all going to be daily charts. New closing highs, no resistance. Nearest support is a fair way away at 24.58. So no reason to stand in front of the truck. Not quite the same for the Nasdaq. Hasn't overcome that final weekly level, that black line at 6,027. So a little bit more to be done there. Not so the Dow. Similar vein to the S&P. New highs. Nothing moving to the top at present. Because we've made new highs this week, it means that no weekly levels can actually move to the top of the trend for at least 2 weeks. Not so in Europe, and especially the FTSE. Pound up equals FTSE down, and as mentioned during the week, we broke down on Thursday, so we closed below that weekly level, and we accelerated lower on Friday, not getting really much benefit from the strength in the States at all. On a bounce, this 72-71 level is pretty pivotal. That area extends up to 71.91, so there's about a 20-point range. The target is 69.30. Moving on to the DAX, monthly resistance has moved to the top, so that is significant. So there is a very major barrier, but that's still another 400 points away. It was slightly quiet coming into the end of the week. Key support 12,287. One stock was added to the portfolio this week, Geos. I wrote about this a few months ago now. It's been base building for some time in the very much unloved oil and gas sector, and the splits or time area studies of what have been creating this base, and we broke out this week. You can see that buy signal from a few days ago, and then we broke out of the top. So very clear reference point below, which is 14.69. Moving on to currencies, this is the euro dollar. We've had a range relativity extreme posted this week. What we really want to see is some resistances move to the top. Now, because we've made a new high for the trend, that is a possibility at the end of the coming week. So euro dollar very much on our radar screens. It was a very important week for the pound. We had a hawkish, or perceived to be hawkish, BOE statement on Thursday. We came down and held key support of 131.60 on that news event. Stayed there for seconds really. We closed way above the third deviation pivot up on the day, and then we've done it again on Friday. Just a point of reference, if we did it on Monday, so if we hit the third deviation up on Monday, that is a short-term extreme. It's very, very rare for any market to ever do this 3 days running. So we will be watching that for a short-term trend the other way. Dollar yen had been under pressure. We had a reversal buy signal on Monday, closed above the third range deviation up as well. It's really moving a bit with equities again, so equities up means dollar yen up to a certain extent. So we're really trapped in the middle of the range. Aussie dollar, interesting as well. We have had another range relativity signal at daily resistance. But we really need to see possibly the weekly level move to the top, which it could do at the end of this coming week in the same vein as the euro dollar. So again, all eyes on the Aussie dollar. We are interested in it. Moving on to dollar Canada. We broke the monthly support a couple of weeks ago, having initially respected it as what we would normally see. What's more interesting, if I go to another chart here, is the fact that we've hit the quarterly, so this is a daily chart, but we put the quarterly range deviation pivot on, and we've hit the third standard deviation down, which doesn't happen very often on anything. So we're looking for potential reversals back up, if only back to that blue line breakdown point. If I just remove that and then put the monthly pivot on, we've also got pretty close to another extreme down at 120.33. So dollar CAD, we're looking for some opportunities to see whether we can get long, and we'll be watching the short-term charts as well. Finally, the dollar index, the inverse of the euro dollar to a certain extent, in terms of we had another range relativity signal, although we came up to this very powerful resistance, which is a monthly from way back, and then a weekly that joined it as well, and that stopped it stone dead. It is still trying to build a base, but obviously we've really got to get over that 92.20 level convincingly, which will then open up space to send us up to 93.92. This leads us into commodities. Gold, we had a sell signal, or a negative signal at weekly resistance at the end of the previous week. Gold has really underperformed if you consider what the dollar's done, which is only rallied slightly. A big focus is that 1307 point. If I do silver, had a signal on the same day, but it was actually into some support areas, and there is still some there, so not as interesting. Crude oil, up every day, stopped just short of that weekly resistance, which is volume based at 50.50. If we manage a 2-day close above there, or a weekly close above there, then that would open up a great deal of space up to 58.58. Copper had a very poor week, and we had a range relativity extreme this week. Looks like it can come all the way back to the original breakout point at 288. Haven't talked about grains for a while. We had another USDA report on this day where that blue square is, which ramped up production again, which dumbfounded the market. But in contrast to the previous report, which also dumbfounded them, the market spiked down and then rejected it. So very good support at 932 3/4. Looks like there's a seasonal low in place. It's a question of how much it can rally. It's probably going to need some sort of frost threat to do that, to make any significant moves. Soy meal, again, a big positive signal there on Wednesday, but there's a very powerful barrier at 31.63 to 31.70 that it's got to get over. Does that, and again it opens up space. Whereas corn, again rejected the report to a certain extent, but hasn't really managed much of a bounce, so pretty quiet there. Wheat, sort of hanging in there. There's a fair way to the major resistance at 475.2. You can see where it broke down previously in August, but keeping an eye on wheat to see whether it can break out some key levels short term, which we'll be monitoring during the coming days. Finally, interest rates. Again, some big contrasts here. This is the UK gilt market. Had a UFO at the final daily and weekly resistance, and with the hawkish Bank of England, price has just collapsed. 123.71 is a focus. This is another market. If it hit the third standard deviation down, so the opposite to the pound, that would be highlighting a short-term extreme for the day if it happens tomorrow. This is the short sterling market, so base rates in the UK. Had a signal UFO and time continuation at daily resistance. Not surprisingly, we've collapsed. This is a very big level, 98.84. Again, if we hit 3 standard deviations again, then I'd be very interested. Just should probably be able to compute roughly where it's going to be. So we opened at 01 and 3 down was 9 ticks below. So yes, so 3 down would take us to about 98.82 tomorrow, which is also major support. So be interested in that level, if only if it's to create a temporary pause or a bit of a bounce. Treasuries in the States were also weaker, although there wasn't actually a signal on the top, unfortunately. We have not managed to close below this. Well, we did by 1 tick, which doesn't really count. 154.28. That is a very important level. Close below there, and especially the low made on Thursday at 12, you can see the amount of space there is until the next support point. So keeping an eye on bonds into Europe. The Bund failed to close above the final monthly resistance at 6314. A stepping process ended for this uptrend on the 420-minute chart, and we've drifted lower, although we're just about hanging in there with this condensed set of daily Henkin-Ashi and normal bar chart levels. If we close below that, a bit like gilts, T-bonds, opens up some space. If we do the ultra long end of the curve, which is called the Buxel, we way off the what has been the all-time high, and even that resistance there, which tells you something about the curve. Massive underperforming in the ultra long end of the European market. And if I do the bobble, which is the 5-year, if we just look at that one, that went to the final weekly resistance up here, I think pretty much the tick, I think, and we've drifted lower, a little bit of minor support, but we could target all the way back down to that monthly line. As you can see, very much in a very broad range at the moment. Might as well complete the roundup of Europe. This is the French market. Had a slam dunk signal on Tuesday. Everyone headed for the exit. We're just about hanging in there with the daily support, but again you can see there's some space. If these weekly levels move to the top, which could happen at the end of the coming week, then that would indicate a powerful resistance being created. Finally do the BTP, which is Italy. Could not close above that monthly level. We did open above it and reverse quite sharply. We've had a stepping process end, and so you've got one with 36.21 above, downside target 133.93. Just going to round up on some existing positions in the equity world. So the first one is VSTM, and the buy signal was originally back here in July. We broke out on some news, positive clinical trials. Pretty quiet week, really. Got that support level that held at 467. Looks like a stock that's just going to be news driven. Will edge sideways in the meantime, but not really pulling back. SPPI, not quite so good this week, and there was some partial profits taken. I have to spread this out because this stock has been at some crazy level in the past. I think it might have been $600 at one point. We had the breakout back here in August. Another buy signal was a breakout, and then we had a slam dunk, and we also reached the time. That blue square is a range relativity extreme. So 50% of the position has been liquidated, keeping the other 50%, and the stop has also been raised. So pretty quiet week, but there was some negatives there. The other one is home builders, ETF XHB, still right up there in terms of the sectors, stubbornly hanging in there, as it were. Missed the stop by I think 6 or 7 cents. So when was that, on Tuesday? But then we had a bear cage signal the following day with a time continuation, and we've drifted back down again. So the stop has remained unchanged from the sell back here. So haven't really got anywhere here so far. Okay, that's it. Join me again next week, and we'll be doing the daily updates as well.